Hare Krishna. There you go. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Bob. Bob, 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 Bob. Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa, Parajikacharya, Ashtottara Sri Srimad, Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON, BBT Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Parajikacharya, Ashtottara Sri Srimad, Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Welcome back, Bob.
Thank you.
You back in town for a while? Little while. Good. Nice to see you, Prabhu. Okay. Narayana Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktim Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 28th day of September, 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order, chapter 26. King Puranjan goes to the forest to hunt, and his queen becomes angry. Text number 13. Give me 1 second here. Tripto rishta sudriptascha kandapa krishnamanasaha nyavachasta vavaroham guhinim guhamedinim tripto rishta sudriptascha kandapa krishnamanasaha Yavachastavaroham Guhinim Guhamedinim Tripto Rishta Sudriptascha Kandapa Krishnamanasaha Yavachastavaroham Guhinim Guhamedinim Tripto Rishta Sudriptascha Kandapa Krishnamanasaha Vachasta Vararoham Guhinim Guhamedinim Tripto Rishta Sudriptascha Kandapa Krishnamanasaha Namachasta Vararoham Guhinim Guhamedinim. Anyone else? Tripto Rishta Dujiptascha Kandapa Krishnamanasaha Namachasta Vararoham Guhinim Guhamedinim. Triptaha, satisfied. Rishtaha, joyful. Sudriptaha, being very proud. Cha, also. Kandapa, by Cupid. Akrishta, attracted. Manasaha, his mind. Na, did not. Yachashta, try. Vada-aroham, higher consciousness. Guhinim, wife. Vihamedinim, one who keeps her husband in material life. Translation. After taking his dinner, so this is Narada Muni speaking to King Prachanabaryashat and telling the allegory of Puranjan, and he's speaking about Puranjan having coming back from the forest after hunting. After taking his dinner and having his thirst and hunger satisfied, King Puranjan felt some joy within his heart. Instead of being elevated to a higher consciousness, he became captivated by Cupid and was moved by a desire to find his wife, who kept him satisfied in his household life. Purport. This verse is very significant for those desiring to elevate themselves to a higher level of Krishna consciousness. When a person is initiated by a spiritual master, he changes his habits and does not eat undesirable eatables or engage in the eating of meat, the drinking of liquor, illicit sex, or gambling. Sattvika ahara, foodstuffs in the mode of goodness, are described in the Shastras as wheat, rice, vegetables, fruits, milk, sugar, and milk products. Simple food like rice, dal, and chapatis and vegetables, milk and sugar constitute a balanced diet. But sometimes it is found that an initiated person, in the name of prasad, eats very luxurious foodstuffs. Due to his past sinful life, he becomes attracted by Cupid and eats good food voraciously. It is clearly visible that when a neophyte in Krishna consciousness eats too much, he falls down. Instead of being elevated to pure Krishna consciousness, he becomes attracted by Cupid. The so-called brahmachari becomes agitated by women, and the vanaprastha may again become captivated into having sex with his wife. Or he may begin to search out another wife. Due to some sentiment, he may give up his own wife and come into the association of devotees and the spiritual master.
So this is going back in time. Due to some sentiment, he may give up his own wife and come into the association of devotees and a spiritual master. But due to his past sinful life, he cannot stay. Instead of being elevated to Krishna consciousness, he falls down, being attracted by Cupid, and takes to another wife for sex enjoyment. The fall of the neophyte devotee from the path of Krishna consciousness down to material life is described in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.17 by Narada Muni. Okay, many of you have devices or books, so I'll say you say. Tyakta swadharmam charanam bhujang hare bhajan bhakvo tapate tato yadi yatra kvava bhadram abhura mushrikim ko varta apto bhajatam swadharmataha. This indicates that although a neophyte devotee may fall down from the path of Krishna consciousness due to his immaturity, his service to Krishna never goes in vain. However, a person who remains steadfast in his family duty or so-called social or family obligation but does not take to Krishna consciousness receives no profit. One who comes to Krishna consciousness must be very cautious and refrain from prohibited activities, as defined by Rupa Goswami in his Upadeshamrita. So you say, Atyahara priyasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangashta laolyancha shadbhim bhakti vinashyati. Next of instruction 2. A neophyte devotee should neither eat too much nor collect more money than necessary. Eating too much or collecting too much is called atyahara. For such atyahara, one must endeavor very much. This is called prayas. Superficially, one may show himself to be very much faithful to the rules and regulations, but at the same time not be fixed in the regulative principles. This is called niyamagraha. By mixing with undesirable persons, or janasanga, one becomes tainted with lust and greed and falls down from the path of devotional service. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshurun Midatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So we're seeing the adventures of Puranjan. He fell into the mode of gross ignorance when he went out to the forest and hunted. He was cruelly killing many animals unnecessarily, and he had ignored his wife. He left his wife and just went out to the forest, and so that was a problem. But then eventually he returned to the household, and he took a bath, and he took some appropriate foodstuffs, it says. And so Prabhupada gives that analogy there, that he's coming back again into interest in spiritual life. But as we will see in this and future verses right here, he wasn't firmly fixed. Puranjan is the conditioned soul, basically. He's every man. He's giving example of an ordinary conditioned soul who's within this city of 9 gates of the body, and he's conditioned by the allurements, especially Cupid and so forth. He has this incredible engagement with his material intelligence, personified as this attractive woman, and he's allured and he engages in material life. But sometimes he may have the impetus for some spiritual inquiry, but without good association he falls again into the modes, and that's what's happening here. He's captivated by Cupid. Now Prabhupada takes advantage of this verse to give us some very practical instructions for those who are desiring to elevate themselves in higher level of Krishna consciousness. For those who have been around a while and remember when these books came out, each time a new book would come out, the devotees would generally read the whole thing right away. And it often had sometimes far-reaching and very deep ways in which it affected devotees and changed their consciousness. So, and also it reflects the history of the movement. Prabhupada, this is now the fourth canto, which was written in 73, 74. I remember working on the fourth canto and the third canto when I first came in 73. The first thing was the Battle of Hiranyaksha and the boar. And that was very absorbing for a new bhakta. And then we went into the fourth canto and gradually came to this. So by that time, Prabhupada had seen, some devotees who were experiencing and showing the symptoms that he shows right in this purport. Is that they come and they're enthusiastic, but if they're not careful to follow the instructions in the Nectar of Instruction, it didn't come out till I think 76, but the instruction was there, to control your tongue, don't eat too much. Of course, when you're very new, eat as much as possible, fill yourself up, because it's kind of an outlet. It's very hard to turn off the spigot of sense gratification right away. So at least, all right, there's these four regular principles. I want to live in a temple, I got to follow these things. But here's this wonderful prasadam. I became totally a halva addict. And I also, I told this story before, but some people are new. And that I was reading the Adi Leela of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I read about Vakreshwar Pandit, who could dance for 72 hours straight, which was like pretty superhuman. And what did Lord Chaitanya said? If I had wings, I could fly. If I had another wing, I could fly like a Gandharva or something. Anyway, I said, I want to try to do that, because I had been kind of athletic, and I said, and we would go out 3 hours a day on Harinam. That was the program, which is really wonderful. So, this is the Brooklyn Temple, and there was a lot of, Sunday feasts were packed, and there were quite a few devotees in the temple. So I said, yeah, but I got to have the right shoes. I just had these flip-flops. If I'm going to dance, the whole time, 3 hours a day, I got to have some shoes. They can't just have flip-flops. So I went to what was known as the shoe room. Now the shoe room, was there. When people come, they have to leave their shoes. They get a number or something, and they get the shoes back. But I knew that there was some shoes in there, even though there was no guests. And I said, all right, let me check it out. Because some people came and left their shoes somehow, there's a whole bunch of shoes. So I looked and looked and looked, and I found these sneakers, we call them sneakers at that time, that perfectly fit. I said, oh, this is Krishna's arrangement, so I'm going to take these shoes. And I did. So I would dance. I don't know if I danced for 3 hours straight, but I tried, So this is the best shape I was ever in my life, But at the same time, the prasadam was just absolutely heavenly. We had these incredible cooks, Mangalananda, Parikat's wife, I forget her name, and many others. And so every meal was great, what to speak of the Sunday feast. So I became, very much attached to halva and other sweets. And so it was kind of a battle between my, athletic activity outside and the halva. But, I survived. But the point is that if you really continue eating too much, that puts a big damper on your advancement. Because as Prabhupada makes it very clear in the Nectar of Instruction, it all moves in a straight line. If you're always loading up your stomach, that's going to agitate the genitals, and and you can't concentrate, and you become more likely to fall asleep during the morning program and everything. So Prabhupada says this is a very significant verse for those desiring to elevate them to the higher levels of Krishna consciousness. When a person initiated, changes his habits. So this is part of what it means to surrender. When you really, in those days, being part of the Hare Krishna movement, you moved in. You can be a guest for some time, but then if you really say you moved into the temple. There were not much of a congregation, certainly not of the Indian people, so much at that point, until later. But so you moved in, and then okay. Here are the if you want to live with us, then you have to have these 4 regs, obviously, 16 rounds, and all kinds of things. So then, if it's really serious, you get initiated, and you vow to follow the regs and the rounds. Those are the basic things. 16 rounds and 4 regs. But there's so many other things to do also, and do's and don'ts. And Prabhupada, gives a little summary one is meant to eat, only prasadam, which immediately means you're not going to eat any meat, fish, or eggs, and on like that. But the idea is that even if you're initiated and you made advancement, you're eating only prasadam, you can eat very luxurious foodstuffs because there's always the offerings for the Lord, the Raj Bhog, and it's possible to become full and to have that a big anchor on your consciousness. So that has to be controlled. And he says that if a neophyte eats too much and too opulently, then he falls down. Instead of being elevated, he becomes attracted by Cupid. So it works together. If you're looking for opulent foodstuffs, you're stuffing the belly too much, then you'll be more agitated for the opposite sex. And that's happened. And he gives an example. Brahmachari can be attracted to women, or a Vanaprastha can be attracted to someone else beside his wife. So this is the dangers, and this is part of the lesson of this story of Puranjan, of this allegory of Puranjan, that we can see oftentimes, those of us who haven't grown up in Krishna consciousness, how Puranjan, he kind of personifies a lot of the attitudes and activities of what we were doing before we came to Krishna consciousness. And indeed, the allegory means here's a typical person in the material consciousness. And that's not unique in this story in the Bhagavatam. We have this whole fifth canto with the forest of material enjoyment. There are a lot of very detailed warnings in the Bhagavatam about material life and the dangers. The basic teaching. You start reading the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and in the second chapter, we hear about the difference between the soul and the body. And we hear that the conditioned soul, is in a state of grand illusion. In our little time of life, it doesn't even have to be our lifetime. Just the point of life that you're in. You tend to forget and push out bad experiences. The mind naturally wants to forget those and try to spin out some kind of way that you can enjoy here. And so the average person who has no idea of previous life, next life, karma, or God, any of these things, is in a grand illusion. And that's very bad association for those who are aspiring for spiritual life. This is one of the principles of fall down, right? Janasanga. Whoever you hang out with, whoever you listen to and you aspire to be with, that's going to affect your consciousness. You become like that. And so, Lord Chaitanya was asked, what's the behavior of devotee? The first thing he says, asatsanga tyaga he vaishnavahacha. Asatsanga tyaga, to give up bad association. That's sometimes not very easy. You're working out there and you have to associate with non-devotees the whole day, or you're in school. They're everywhere. And if you're trying to be a devotee, that you can feel that's a pull, especially you have all these old friends you've made, and some family. They can all be janasanga if they're not at all interested in Krishna consciousness, which is likely. So that's a big part of the surrendering process, becoming a devotee. Really being careful of your association. And it doesn't just come with one-on-one, nowadays through the internet, what you read, what you see, what you hear, music, all of that is janasanga, unless, of course, it's devotees, devotee music, devotee literature, like that. So Srila Prabhupada works so hard to give us not just the basics of Krishna consciousness, but a whole Krishna culture. The whole Krishna culture, the deities. So you can imagine what it's like to establish deity worship in a place like America. Started in San Francisco with the Jagannath deities. And then gradually Prabhupada was able to establish Radha Krishna worship, which is a very high standard. It was revolutionary, and still is. So the deity worship is a whole culture there. Of course, the vision. When you think about it, what is an arti? All of your senses are engaged. You're seeing the beautiful deities. You're hearing the kirtan or the songs to the spiritual master or bhajan. The fragrance of the incense, the lamp. The touch is there. And eventually, of course, the prasadam. When you have deities, you always have prasadam. So that's the idea: is that all our senses are now contaminated. They're attracted to matter, and they need to be purified. Purification of the senses and, of course, the mind with it is really the essence of the practice of Bhakti Yoga. It's a science. And Prabhupada came, gradually introduced what was appropriate. Beginning with just chant. He knew his audience very well. They're, taking LSD, and then, they're not pure. But those who were interested in chanting and stayed to hear, especially if they stayed to hear his talk, they were blessed. From the chanting, you would get purified enough to become receptive to the message, the philosophical message, which is essential to know. And gradually he got enough followers who were ready to take the whole program, miraculously. Not miraculously, by the transcendental, energy of the Lord, purification. But as we all know, it's a daily effort that has to be put in. Every day, the chanting of the rounds. Every day, the controlling of the senses. Every day, making the decision to hear this, not hear that. Read this, not read that. And associate with devotees rather than outsiders. And then, if one really is serious about that, you'll be protected by the internal energy. How does that protection manifest? Distaste for the Mayak things, for the, it's vairagya. What do we learn? Second chapter, first canto. Just the second verse in that series, beginning with what is Dharma? Dharma, Savai Sangbaro Dharmo, Yato Bhaktir Hokshaje. Real Dharma is that which awakens or engenders our natural devotion for the Supreme Lord, the Transcendental Lord at Hokshaja. But it has to be unmotivated and uninterrupted to really satisfy the self. And as soon as you begin that Dharma, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojataha Janayat Yashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayata Hoitukam. Again, the word hoituki is that by serving Krishna, or Vasudeva, Bhakti Yoga, by engaging in that, quickly one develops detachment from the allurements of that we're reading about here, illicit sex, and etc., and knowledge. The knowledge and the vairagya go together. You'll be attracted to something, right? You want to eat some ice cream, but then you learn, oh my God, look at the news story here. It says that this brand of ice cream has been contaminated by this thing. Immediately your attraction is gone. You were dreaming of a chocolate chip ice cream, and then boom. Well, I don't want to try that, right? Your knowledge has created your vairagya. So that's a very important element of it. But it's not sufficient. In other words, you'll be attracted to some other ice cream. Boga ice cream. But what if you know that all of these material attractions and engagements ensure you another birth, death, old age, and disease, threefold miseries. In other words, prolongs your stay in this material world. Then you realize it's all poison. All of this material enjoyment is poison. This is Maya's trick. All right? So, now what does Prabhupada, why does he quote this verse here? This Dravida Dasa, he would quote this one quite often. And that is that the value, so he's warning against the, becoming less than vigilant in eschewing and rejecting the things that block us. But he knows that, well, sometimes it's not possible. Well, even if you fall down, you're still blessed. That's what this verse is about. In other words, don't wait, don't hesitate. Yes, it can be very strict. But even if you just begin the process and make an effort, you're way more advanced than those who are very strictly following some material dharma. That's the Chakva Swadharmam. Swadharmam means your place in the social order, your material duties. And if someone gives that up, joins the Hare Krishnas and worships the lotus feet of Hari, but he falls away. It's happened a lot. So, and it's apakva. I love this word apakva. You know the word shrapacha? The dog cookers. Pacha means to cook. So apakva means not well done. Your bhakti is taken out of the stove before it's done. So that's what this means. Your bhajan is not mature, and you fall away. Where is there any abhadra for him? Right? Neha bhikamanashosti pratyavayana vidyate. Krishna says right in the second chapter. So even if you put down the Bhagavad Gita, you don't read it, you'll learn that one. And that is that in this endeavor, Krishna consciousness, there's no loss and then no diminution. Where can you say that about anything material? No matter how high you rise materially, money, fame, whatever it may be, it's all lost. Mrityu sarva haraschaham. Krishna says, without doubt, as death, I take everything away, everything material. Right? What do you got left? Your bank account. That's a name on it, and that name belongs to your body, and your body's dead. You got nothing. You come with, you may make a billion, 10 billion, 100 billion. There's 100 billionaires now, but they're much more unfortunate than a new bhakta who comes and then has trouble and goes away. Because the new bhakta has got some credits now in his bhakti bank account. That belongs to the soul, and the soul is you, and that stays with you. So a very, very important verse here. The next verse, Prabhupada would always quote, tasyaiva heto. Therefore, someone who's intelligent, kovida, will strive for that which is not available in all three worlds, up to Brahma Loka, down to Patala Loka. And that is bhakti, Lord Krishna's lotus feet. Because it stays with you. Everything else is lost. So if you're really intelligent, you'll strive for that. That's the verse that goes with this. What does someone who doesn't worship Krishna, what do they gain? Nothing. Kovarta apto. So Prabhupada, so now is the hopeful side. And first he's giving a warning, some strict warning. Don't fall away, don't eat too much, right? Now he's saying, well, okay, it happens. But, don't let that discourage you. In other words, try your best, and hopefully you'll be able to come to the point of a steadiness. But don't hesitate, because even if you just do a little bit, or some portion, and that will be to your eternal benefit. So the Prabhupada warns, one who comes to Krishna consciousness must be very cautious, refrain from prohibited activities, as defined in Rupa Goswami. Then he quotes Atyahara Priyasascha. Now these 6 expand into 8. Atyahara means, of course, overeating, which was mentioned here, but also collecting too much. The idea is that atyahara means ahara means to consume. So atyahara means consuming too much, eating too much. But things that are valuable, that you want to hold on to, more than necessary for you, that's also a drag, an anchor on your advancement, because that's a point of attachment, right? In other words, what does it do? It shows that you're not surrendered. Goptvitve, Vananang Tata. Remember those 6? We should review them again. Anukulyena sankalpa, patikulya savarjanam. To accept those things favorable and to reject the things unfavorable. These are very clear. You know what that Rakshishyatiti vishvaso goptvitve Vananang Tata. Rakshishyatiti means Krishna will protect. Just look at the great examples we have of Srila Prabhupada is a great example. The 6 Goswamis, they gave up all of their accoutrements. Rupa and Sanatan, they were part of the administration. They were, had so much influence, so much wealth. All of these people build up as defenses. This is called the famous fallible soldiers mentioned at the beginning of the 2nd canto. Everybody material, you sense, oh boy, there's a lot of danger out there. What do they do in America? Let me buy a gun, right? It's crazy. That's going to protect you against old age, disease, death, all these other things. But there's people, buy these things because and get all these things as protections, or as sources of enjoyment. Things that may I'll enjoy it later on. Accumulate. Accumulation is a sign of trepidation and fear that there'll come a point when you'll need that and have it. There's all kinds of things. So that over collection is also a blockage. To have too many material things, because you had to worry about them instead of Remember Sanatana Goswami when he took sannyas? I mean, just see the contrast. He was at the right hand of the king. Had all the money and everything he needed. Met Lord Chaitanya. The desire was completely lost. And take sannyas, they didn't want anything. So, the story, Rupa Goswami, they liquidated everything. Rupa Goswami had a big boat full of gold. You can imagine how much that would be worth now? How much it was worth then. He divided it up perfectly, 50% for the Brahmins, Vaishnav, 25% for the family so they didn't freak out, and then 25% for emergencies. He didn't keep any for himself, he just went to Vrindavan, but he saw that Sanatan would have a more difficult time. And eventually Sanatana used it for buying his way, bribing the jail keeper so he'd let him go. So he got free. And he had this servant that he kept, Ishan. I think his name was Ishan. And, but the servant being a very responsible, he kept a little money on the side just in case they need to pay some tolls or something, 8 pieces of gold. And when it came down to it, Sanatana, found out about that. I'm going to tell the whole story. And he thought it was 7 pieces, so he said, give me this, 7 pieces of gold, So he gave him 7 pieces of gold and kept one aside. And he said, here, you take it to the innkeeper. We're going to kill him for it. And he said, oh, thank you, you've saved me from this great sin. And here, you keep the gold, I'll take you across the difficult tract of land for free. I said, no, you keep the gold because it's a death knell for us. Just take us across, So he did. And then at the end after, he said, Ishan, I think you've got some gold left, right? Yes, master, I have 1 piece of gold. Take it and go home. So now he's free. He felt completely free, right? And then he felt ecstatic, no one's going to steal anything from him, he just completely depending on Krishna and Lord Chaitanya. Then he met a brother-in-law who gave him, said, well, stay here, relax, what are you doing? He said, I'm not staying here at all, because then he get back into it, into the money and the pelf and everything. And so he said, well, at least take this nice charter, to stay warm. So, okay, I'll take the charter. Finally, when he met Lord Chaitanya, he saw Lord Chaitanya looking at the charter. He'd given everything up. He said, okay, I got to get rid of the charter. So he donates the charter to some poor mendicant on the bank of the Ganges who's washing his old rags, And he thought Sanatana had a bearing, intelligent. He said, why are you joking with me? Come on, why would you give me your great charter? He said, no, you take the great one, And so he was free, So this is the perfect example of enunciation. If you just go halfway, whatever you hold on to is going to be an anchor in as you go. And so it's a struggle to give up all attachments. And that's one of the values of austerity, preaching, is that really you feel you have to depend on Krishna, right? And so some of our greatest devotees in this movement, they've taken on such difficult projects. I think of Indradumna Swami. What was his nickname? Indiana Jones Swami or something? Indy. Yeah. I remember when we were in Miami, remember that? And he had just taken sannyas. And he didn't really know what to do at that time. This was after 86, Bhagavan had left, the whole thing. So he said, yeah. So he comes to America and he consults with Vidyananda Maharaj. Well, what is that? I'm not sure. Do you remember? I don't know. But he came back to America. He was originally American. And so Vidyananda Maharaj suggested he go to Brazil and preach, So okay. So down he went. And I flew to Brazil once to what's the main city there? Rio de Janeiro. Yeah, and then we went to the farm So there's a stop there, and there's a city in the middle of the Amazon. What's it called? I forget. Manaus. So, I didn't stay in Manaus, I just more or less landed there and waited, but it's surrounded by the Amazon jungle. So he stayed in Manaus, and there was, at that time, devotees there by that time. And so he went to a temple, and he saw this very well-dressed lady, dancing and chanting in the temple. He said, I want to meet that. Turns out to be the governor's wife, So I think he came up with the idea, well, let's have a pilgrimage up the Amazon, and we'll distribute prasadam, So he took a few intrepid devotees. And the holy name, of course. And I think the governor had provided the boat and the captain and everything, Even on the boat, when you get in the Amazon River, there's danger from these, he told the story, huge moths, poisonous moths that come flying into the boat. You have to, what to speak of, you get out, because they stopped, periodically to go into the inner. And then, of course, I saw a photo. The devotees are sitting in the boat, like as close to the middle as the boat is, by a little rowboat, right from the, because they got piranhas in there. So anyway, so they would go out and do kirtan and distribute prasadam, you know. So one time he's walking along, and suddenly there's a whole bunch of some kind of a spider web. It seemed like a spider web, and he was stung, and he fell down on the ground. Yeah, and he told the story. What to do? There's no way of taking him back down the river to the hospital. You know, there's no time for that. But luckily, there was some local, doctors, herbal doctors who knew what to do, and they were able to treat him and spread, and he survived that. There's a whole bunch of it. He wrote a book about it. So that was the start, and then he continued in that vein. So that makes you take shelter of Krishna. When you put yourself in a position where you really are, relying, and you have to call out at every moment, and that was Srila Prabhupada's example that he gave us, how he himself did it, and always felt safe and not alone, be under protection. So the Prabhupada, gives he ends up with going through the others. One of them is niyamagraha, which has also two meanings. One is achahara is two meaning, achahara over collecting. Niyamagraha, it could be niyamagraha or niyamagraha. So the way Sanskrit works, that oftentimes when you have these two words meeting, you have the sandhi rules. So you don't really know. So it can mean either one, and they're both important. So niyama, I forget which one is which. I think niyama agraha means to not accept the niyamas, the regulations. In other words, to cut corners. Usually you don't just give them up wholesale. You say, well, yeah, I can do A, B, and C. I can do 3.5 regulations, but the second part of the fourth one I can't do. That's dangerous, very dangerous. But the other one is to accept the regulations, but do so kind of just as going through the motions. You're not really absorbed. You're not really accepting them in your heart, And so that can be involved in, as much as, I'm attending the program, but your mind is a million miles away. You're not really thinking of the meaning, of the samsara prayers or the other things we sing. It's just kind of you're there physically, but you're not there really mentally. And then you don't usually stay very long that way. Because you really have to bring your mind, and you have to understand and meditate on the deep meaning of what's going on. So all of these are important to know. The Upadesha Mita means the essence of advice. Every single verse is important. There's how many? Three verses dealing with the relations with devotees. How to regard different levels of devotees. Don't judge someone on the basis of their external body. That's a whole verse about that. And then loving exchanges between devotees. They're all important. So Prabhupada's taking advantage here, this wonderful purport of reminding us, bringing in this instruction about how we should practice devotional service, and don't be like Puranjan. He had a chance. He took a bath and had some proper foodstuffs, but instead of getting spiritual, he ate too much. And then he's just thinking about his wife and Cupid, sex desires coming. So this is, we don't want to follow that. So there's a lot of good instruction here, and each verse is important. The whole allegory is very instructive, obviously. All right, I'm going to read this translation again, and any discussion we can entertain for a few minutes. After taking his dinner and having his thirst and hunger satisfied, King Puranjan felt some joy within his heart. Instead of being elevated to a higher consciousness, however, he became captivated by Cupid and was moved by a desire to find his wife, who kept him satisfied in his household life. Any discussion on these points? Hari Bol.
Thank you for a nice class, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Ghosh Prabhupada.
Which one did you say, Niyama Agraha? You did the short vow for not following?
Yeah.
And the agraha, I looked up the synonyms while you were talking, so you were correct. Agraha is too much attachment to the letter of the law, but not getting to the essence of it.
The spirit of the law, right.
And this is just a small point, but it would not surprise anyone to hear you say the idea of having what to speak of using the gun was crazy because you're a Brahmin.
Using what? Oh, the gun. Oh, the gun.
But,
I wasn't recommending that we do.
No, I said it's not surprising you wouldn't. You would think it was crazy to have one or use one, but anything and everything can be used in Krishna's service. We know that. When I was a bhakta, I was sleeping with a pistol on my pillow guarding the temple.
Oh, God in the devil, yeah.
And in Mayapur, they were attacked. And
Yes,
they used
yes,
guns.
yes.
I mean, guns have their place.
I'm not saying, yeah. I was speaking about people in general.
But
massive, gun ownership. That's just
so
fallible soldiers. Go ahead.
I wouldn't say that publicly. But anyone listening, we are not pacifists, we're peaceful. You try to hurt Krishna or his devotees and see how Arjuna's mood manifests.
Shringadev.
Shingadev. Yeah, that principle, Krishna is the protector, and Krishna is in all of his energies, and the spiritual master teaches the sincere disciple or follower how to use everything in Krishna's service.
Yes. That began with this discussion of vairagya, and that is yukta vairagya. Anasaktasya vishayanyutaham vayunjadani bandha krishna sambandha yuktam vairagya muchyate. It's a very important principle. Rupa Goswami mentioned, I think, right near the beginning of Bhakti Samhita Sindhu. Not being attached to the things that we come in touch with. Anasaktasya vishayan, the enjoyable things. But using those that are appropriate in Krishna's service. This is real vairagya, detachment. Proper detachment. Anything else? Oh, wait a minute. Haribol, Ravi.
Yeah. So I have this question that now, in my day-to-day life, because after reading Bhagavad Gita and hearing lectures, I know that how the three modes work, and now after in my day-to-day activities, at some point, if I realize I'm in the three mode, I'm in the mode of passion or ignorance, right? I know that, okay, at least sometimes I get that thought, okay, now I think I'm in such and such mode. So then how do I immediately come out of it, and how do I overcome that?
Hare Krishna. It's all in the mind. The mind is, the modes affect the mind, and then you act in a certain way, because the mind is, before you act. So you need to call out to Krishna to, take you out of these modes, to protect you. In other words, it's the antidote to Maya is Krishna. Daiviyesha gunamayi mama maya doratyaya mama viyepa padyante maya me taranti. That's the verse for you. And also manchiyo vabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate. But it's impossible, on your own. In other words, you're able to, by force of will, maybe to change your mode to some degree, by force of will. I mean, it happens all the time. People are trying to give up addiction to alcohol or some drug, or smoking, the big thing, So okay, I've had it, I've smoked my last cigarette, and that lasts a little while. And then you get this unbearable urge, okay, well, let me get some help. So you go down to the drugstore, you get one of those patches, oh, okay, now I don't want it as much, But it's artificial. In the proper environment where your friends are smoking or drinking, then you fall away from it. So that's illustrative of where Krishna says it's impossible to overcome these on your own. And also that other one from the second chapter, so famous, Vishayavanivartante nidahara siddhehinak. That and word ahara is there. We have an atyahara. That by force of will, one can stop consuming one or more of the objects of the senses you're trying to give up. Vishayavanivartante nidahara siddhehinak. But the desire for them is not expunged. It's just waiting there, for the proper environment, and then it flares up again, and down you go. It fall off the wagon, you know what I mean? So the easy solution is, first of all, to practice Krishna consciousness very strictly, so you have you're protected to a large degree. Now it's difficult. You're working outside amongst the non-devotees. That's the great austerity. But even there, if you're strong enough, you can catch yourself, first of all, avoid association, unnecessary association. Falling into a certain mode, you say, oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. I'll teach you so many shlokas, Bhagavad Gita shlokas, very nectar, And that immediately takes your mind away from it, and you can realize, oh, I don't want to do that. That's the only hope. Constant chanting of the holy name is your best protection.
And
reading Prabhupada's books, hearing. There's so many classes you can hear online. We have a million recordings. So The hearing and the chanting and the remembering, will protect you. You just have to cultivate it. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. Yeah.